Throughout time and history, people have been leaders, and many people have left their legacy on our world. But everything you do in life has to be well done, or the outcome won't come out the way that you want it to be. When someone shows leadership and legacy, what do you think about? Well, many people come to my mind, but many people don't, because they were forgotten. One of the forgotten people of our past is brought back to life in a picture that was painted by an unknown artist. Her name was Dido Elizabeth Belle, and she was a leader who left her legacy on England. Dido Elizabeth Belle was a biracial Englishwoman who lived life like no other of her time. She was raised by her great-uncle, William Murray, who was the first Earl of Mansfield and the Lord Chief Justice that was over many historic cases that affected the African slaves. Her father, Sir John Lindsay, fought and died as an admiral, and her mother was a slave who we presume to have died giving birth. Dido showed leadership and legacy as she helped end slavery in England. Leadership. In many ways, it's hard to explain how people show leadership if you have never met them. But with what I have learned about Dido, I believe she was a person who got what she wanted from people, and she got the best from her uncle. Actually showing leadership is the honorable part of being a leader, and it takes work to be someone people want to listen and to look up to. Dido Elizabeth Belle had power. It wasn't exactly power over people, but power over her voice and what she wanted. And she wanted slavery to change in England. In using this power, leadership, she led her great-uncle into what he knew was right. Her uncle was in charge of many cases dealing with slavery in England, and one of Lord Mansfield's big cases, he is under the influence of his great-niece, and he says, "The state of slavery is of such a nature that it is incapable of being introduced on any reasons, moral or political, but only positive law, which preserves its force long after the reasons, occasion, and time itself, from whence it was created, is erased from memory. It is so odious that nothing can be suffered to support it but positive law. Whatever inconveniences therefore may follow from a decision, I cannot say this case is allowed or approved by the law of England." I have read this quote many, many times, but I have finally figured out what it means. It was very common for people back in those times, but Lord Mansfield, who had once agreed with those people, wasn't able to say if the case was approved or not. And that leaves a very important question. Why? Well, Dido wanted something that was important to her, and in many ways you could say that she led her great-uncle into making many decisions, and the leadership that Dido had showed to her uncle must have been something very strong, because she was able to change the way her uncle felt about slavery. By Dido constantly being around and showing and leading her uncle, she filled his mind with thoughts and ideas that make her country environment better. Dido helped in slavery in England with something so small but so important called leadership. That changed a very important man, and that takes a lot. Legacy. Dido left a lasting effect on her country. She helped people to realize what was right for her country, and with that she left her legacy. When I think of legacy, I think of leaving a trail of hope that you so strongly believe in. And in many ways, it can be very difficult to carry out what you want to happen. But through hard work and your little trail of hope, you can leave your legacy for other people to see and understand who you were and what you believed in as a person. Leaving a mark in what you believe in is what people most often want to do. Dido's legacy was changing the world around her that didn't understand her and helped end slavery in England. But what made Dido's legacy possible? Well, for Dido, the odds weren't really in her favor. First, she was a woman, and her skin was of color. So making something as important as ending slavery was very difficult to achieve. But Dido had her uncle, and her great-uncle may have felt the same way she did, but only towards her. And that may have made many people understand what she wanted to achieve. When you're dealing with something as important as legacy, it can make the worst things sound grand. With Dido, she had something you can't actually touch because it lives in history. It lives in what we know right now. We know that it's okay to be different. Dido's legacy impacts the life of many people of African descent that live in England. And if it wasn't for her and what she so strongly believed in, things wouldn't have gone the way we know them to be now. Thomas Hutchinson, ex-governor of Massachusetts, came to the Keenwood house and observed the way she interacted with the others. A black came in after dinner and sat with the ladies, and after coffee, walked with the company in the gardens. One of the young ladies, having her arm within the other, she had a very high cap, and her wool was much frizzled in her neck, but not enough to answer the large curls now in fashion. She's neither handsome nor gentle, pert enough. I knew her history before, but my lord mentioned it again. Sir John Lindsay having taken her mother prisoner in a Spanish vessel, brought her to England, where she was delivered of this girl, of which she was then with child, and which was taken care of by Lord Mansfield, and has been educated by his family. He calls her Dido, which I suppose is all the name she has. He knows he has been reproached for showing fondness for her. I dare not de criminal. A few years ago, there was a cause before his lordship brought by a black for recovery of his liberty. A Jamaica planter being asked what judgment his leadership would give. No doubt, he answered, he will be set free, for Lord Mansfield keeps a black in his house which governs him and his whole family. This was written in Thomas Hutchinson's diary. Back then, Dido's situation was very unusual, but everything that she was able to accomplish just shows the impact that she had on the world around her. And I think that is a good example of legacy. This picture, nobody knows who painted it. It was made for Dido and her cousin Elizabeth. In many ways, it shows how Dido was different compared to her cousin. But it also shows that Dido was of importance, and that makes you think of who she really was. In conclusion, Dido was strong, and she believed in equal rights. She didn't let the setback of her color change the fact that she wanted England to be free of slavery. She wanted to take the veil off from around her great-uncle's eyes and help lead England to a better place. And in that process, she left her legacy for everyone in today's time to look at and remember her. Not as a forgotten piece of the past, but as the missing piece of a puzzle to a very important puzzle. And I feel like people everywhere should learn how to leave their legacy and show leadership through their daily lives. That way we can live in a world of opportunity and growth.